On this channel, $1 Million Made Easy, we love to run numbers for people. In this video, I'm going to talk about looking at average returns and how they can be quite deceptive. And yet we all use them. On this channel, I actually use them because here's what I actually show people is if you look at the 10-year average since 1923, you could have a decade where you had as little as 0.67 return. The 15-year average, the worst case, these are the averages going down through 10 years after 1923, 15 years after 1923, and so on. These are the averages going down through here. And so I like to show people that if you can get at least 20 years looking at what the market's doing, you can look at the averages. And this is the lowest in this whole column for a 20-year average. You can see them going down through there. And look at that, 1929 is the lowest average you're going to find. That's 20 years using these returns from 1929 all the way down. You average those out, you come out to 6.46. That's the worst case scenario. This is the median. This is the best. Now, what I want you to notice, the longer you stay in there, the averages look better and better and better. Why is that? Why is that? It's because you can have some down decades which bring the averages down, but if you're in there for a longer period of time, you're going to catch some of these better returns. If you're in there for 25, 30, 35 years, you're going to catch some of these good ones too. Again, when you're using historical returns to the S&P 500. But that is a little bit dangerous, and that is why. But I only do this for comparison's sake. I said, got to be in there for at least 25 or 30 years for these averages to really kick in, because then your worst case scenario gets better and better on the averages. But let me show you what I'm talking about here. These are the actual returns by decade, 1930 returns. If you go down through here and average these numbers up from 1930 to 1939, you know what the average is going to be? 5.34. That's 1930. You can see it right here, 1930, 5.34. Okay, that's the average if you take these down and average them. But I want you to notice something. This is so important. If you got a 5.34% return, what it's going to take, say you have $100, you put it in there, $100, and you're getting 5.34% return, annual return. At the end of that 10 years, you would have $168.23. If you just put it in a 5.34% CD, you'd have that much. But if you actually run the numbers at $100 and run it down through here, you're going to end up with $99.48. What did we start with? $100. This decade, you would have actually ended up losing money, even though the average says you're getting 5.34%. Same with a decade from 2000 2009. That was even the worst case scenario. You go down through here and average this up, you're going to come up with a 1.21 positive return. But if you look at the actual compound annual growth rate, it's down almost 1%. What do you end up with if you put this in a 1.21% CD at $100? You'd have $112.80 at the end of the decade. What would you actually have ended up with in the year 2000, putting $100 in the stock market with these returns? $90.88. What's going on here? It's because when the market goes down or goes up, to get back to that, you have to do more than what. For example, if it's $100, the market goes down 33%, you have $67 after that. After that being down 33%. So you'd think, well, if I go up 33%, I'd be back to $100. No, you'd only be back to $89.11. You'd actually need a return of 49.25% to get back to that $100 because you lost 33, you need 49.25 to get back. What does that mean? If you average this out, it looks like you got an 8.13% return. But did you get any return? No, the actual compound annual growth rate was 0. You started at 100, you ended at 100. We could do this with any kind of numbers. Maybe the most obvious one is we just show you this. The market drops 50%, you're down to $50. $100 is down to $50. What does it take to get back to $100? Up 50%? Nope, that would only get you to $75. You'd have to have a 100% return the next year to get back to $100. And that's an average return. If you're down 50, up 100, that's an average return of 25%. But your actual compound annual growth rate would only be 0 because you started with 100 and ended with 100. But that kind of explains why it's kind of dangerous to go by annual returns. But actually, that's what we all kind of do just for comparison's sake, because you want to see, okay, a 30-year average, you're averaging 10.75 in the worst case scenario, as opposed to a 10-year average where you could have as low as a 0.67% return on your money. I just want to show the difference. It's dangerous to use annual returns, and yet we all do it. We all do it. Let me just show you one other thing, just to show you this real quick. You have, let's see here. Let's look at the withdrawal spreadsheet here. Say you have $1 million and you want to take $3,500. This will make sense in a minute. $3,500 out a month. Where would you be after these different time periods? I'm picking 1924. You go down through here, you got a lot of good returns. You got some bad returns in depression years. The 10-year average is 11.82. The 20-year average is 10.94. The 30-year average is 12.34. So at the end of each of these time periods, 10 years, 15, 20, you can see it's in the millions of dollars. But I want you to follow along here as we go down through these years. We're going to lose one of those positive years, or we're going to see the numbers dropping a little bit. It won't make sense here until I get to 19, let's see. Here's 1927 numbers, a summary box. So look what happens in 1928. You actually run out of money in 23 years. Here's the averages. Let me look at the 1927 here real quick. Look at the average. 13.39 for 10 years. 20 years is 10.13, and 30-year average is 13.21. And the very next year, you have plenty of money left after each of these time periods. Look at 1928. The average dropped down to 6.18. 20-year was 8.56, and the 30-year was 11.62. Those 30-year averages always stay up there. The problem with it is your money might not last that long for the averages to be kicked back up, all these positive. And let me show you the extreme case here, 1929. 1929, you're out of money in 13 years. Why? Because that first 10 years, you only had a return of 4.54, but actually you didn't really have that. The average was 4.54, but we saw in the earlier video, you would actually, or the other spreadsheet we looked at, you'd actually be out of money because the actual compound annual growth rate would have run you out of money, so that you're out of money in 13 years, even though you look like you have all kinds of positive returns here, annual returns. Problem with it is your money didn't last long enough to get up here for this average to kick into 11.48. Yeah, you had some really great returns going down through her, but you were already out of money after 13 years. So you didn't have any money left to take advantage of these good years that got the average up to 11.48. I hope this makes sense to you. I just want to show you can't just go by average returns. Because if we went by average returns, we just set the rate at, let's just say, interest rate of 8%, and we ran the numbers at 8%, bingo, you got all kinds of money after 20, 25, 30 years. But that's not the way the stock market works. You can't go by average returns because the market doesn't go that way. Even though the average may look like it's 8%, let me reset this here real quick, the 1929 numbers. The average says you're getting 4.54, 6.46, and 11.48. But you didn't have enough money to last long enough to get to these positive returns. So I just wanted to show you that you've got to look at the compound annual growth rate, not just the average return. Again, this is just a review in the 1930 numbers. It looked like you averaged 5.34, but you actually had a negative return when you actually ended up with less money than what you started with. Of course, when you're taking money out, you're going to knock it down even quicker. But you can't just look at average returns, and yet everybody's guilty of it. And I even use it sometimes to show the benefit of staying in it for the long run. So you look at the averages here. It's a lot better out here, 35, 40, 45 years for these average returns than it is the worst case scenario for a 10-year return, which is 0.67. Hopefully this makes sense. That's what we do on this channel. We love to educate people because average returns looks like it should work, but in actuality it doesn't, because of this simple fact right here. Market goes down 50%. If it goes back up 50%, you're still not back to where you began. You need to have 100% return to get back to $100. That's what we do on this channel. We love to run numbers, and we love to explain some of these phenomenon that we see. Please consider subscribing to this channel. Please let people know there's a channel out there that will run numbers, but also explain things like this. So it's kind of, it doesn't make sense sometimes to think, well, it's down 50. I should be able to just go back up 50 and back there. No, it doesn't work that way. But thanks so much for watching.